look at another example of the for count. And in this particular example of the for, we're going to tell the loop where to start and where to stop versus just telling it how many times we want it to repeat. Your textbook talks about the fact that all loops start counting at 0. So this is kind of like a generic thing that you should know about programming. In computer programming, no matter what the language, if the computer is going to count for you, it always starts counting at 0, which is not natural to us, because if you start counting it, if you start it to count, you're going to start counting at the number 1. Okay, computers are a little bit different from us. They're going to start counting at the number 0. That's something that you should take away and kind of understand about how programs and computers process information. Computers always start counting at 0. Because that's not really natural to us, lots of programmers will set up a range. So especially if my output is supposed to give me a specific number of things. So there's a couple of ways that programmers and what you're doing in the chapter can kind of get around that. So again, let's go back to the syntax of the for statement. You have to put for. The count is my counter control variable, or my variable, okay? Or the value that's being kept up with every time this loop repeats. In range. So notice that my argument this time is not just the number 5, but rather I have 2 arguments. One is the upper bound, the lower bound, and the second one is the upper bound. So I'm telling the computer to start counting at the number 1 and to stop counting at the number 0. Okay? One thing I want to point out to you in your book, the syntax tells you that the 2 arguments would be lower bound, comma, upper bound plus 1. So I just want to kind of demonstrate to you what that means and how a loop would function. So for example, when we process this loop, we tell it where to start counting and where to stop. So basically, it's always going to stop right before you tell it to. So if you put 100, it's going to stop at 99. So if I have a loop that says I want you to print the numbers 1 through 100, watch what happens in this loop. When I run the module, it goes all the way down to 99, but it does not print 100. I hope you guys can see that. Okay, so if I want the number 100 to be included, then I have to set this as plus 1. So instead of 100, it needs to be set at 101. That's what they mean when they say upper bound plus 1. So now when I run this module, I'm going to update my save. It should take us through the number 100, and you can see that down in the very bottom left corner. Okay, so that's what the plus 1 means. I hope that was helpful.